What's up guys, so in case you missed it, Insomniac gave us a new trailer at Paris Games Week 2017 for Marvel's Spider-Man, coming exclusively to PlayStation 4 in 2018. With this trailer, we finally get some solid details about the story and we get to see a bunch of characters. So as per usual, me being the huge Spider-Man fan that I am, I rewatched this trailer about 461 times just to bring you all an in-depth trailer breakdown with Easter eggs, comic references, and some of my personal thoughts and balls to the wall speculations that will probably never happen in a million years, but you know, speculating is fun, so fuck it. So with all of that said, let's go ahead and get into the trailer. So we start off with one of these annoying trailer before the trailer things that movies do to quickly send the message to people who are just going to press the skip ad button at the bottom right. As per usual with this game's trailers, we start off with a shot of the city with some people talking in the background. I've said it before and I'll say it again, this city looks beautiful and I can't wait to swing around it for countless hours. Next we get the reveal of who the voices we're hearing in the background are, and they're none other than Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson. These are the first of many characters we see in this trailer. I'll talk about MJ later, but let's talk about Peter for a bit. So this is the first time we actually get to see what Peter looks like in the game, and honestly I like it. His hair gives me a little bit of an Andrew Garfield kind of vibe. So having a little bit of familiarity with a previous version of Peter is a good thing. One thing I noticed about Peter's design is that he's always wearing these bracelets, and this immediately got me thinking. They could just be bracelets, you know, Peter, he's a pretty fashionable guy like that, you know? Or they could be web shooters designed to look like bracelets. Think about it. Insomniac said countless times that they really want to focus on the Peter Parker half of Spider-Man, and that we would be able to play as Peter. Well, in previous Spider-Man games, the Peter Parker segments were usually just walking around a building and not being able to really interact with anything in any significant way. I've always had an issue with this because I've always wanted Peter to do more. So maybe there's segments in this game where Peter has to be a hero but he doesn't have quick access to a suit, so he made these easily disguisable web shooters. This would also give him access to webbing during cutscenes where he's Peter Parker and has to quickly shoot out a web or even deploy a spider tracer like in Homecoming. Personally, I think it's a pretty fun idea, and it makes it so that Peter can keep all of his spider abilities without being Spider-Man. Before we move on to the next scene, I want to focus on the conversation that's being had here.
With Fisk behind bars, what's next?
And the city's safer than ever. Maybe Peter Parker can have more of a life.
Maybe the city needs our friend more than you think.
So this obviously takes place after you take down Kingpin towards the beginning of the game, and it sounds to me like Peter feels like the city doesn't need Spider-Man anymore and he can finally have a normal life. So maybe this game's story dives a little bit into a sort of Spider-Man No More plotline. This could actually work with the bracelet web shooter idea. If it is a Spider-Man No More type of story, then maybe after Peter throws out the suit and realizes he needs to be Spider-Man again, he uses these disguised web shooters for the meantime until he gets his suit back. I'm going to talk more about the Spider-Man No More idea later, so keep it in mind. Next we get to see another character, Aunt May. Not much to say about her other than she's working at Feast and she's overprotective and caring for her nephew. Peter mentions to Aunt May that he's a little behind on rent, and presumably at some point in the story Peter's going to get evicted from his apartment, so clearly the Parker luck is going to be playing a part in the story. Here we get gameplay of Peter walking around the Feast shelter, but this doesn't tell us much about what we're going to actually be doing as Peter objective-wise. Notice he's still wearing those bracelets, so again, let's hope we get some Peter web-slinging action with them. We get a Daily Bugle newspaper with a few interesting headlines. Martin Lee and his Feast shelter, they're talking about Fisk, that Jonah is still at it with his Spider-Man hate speech, and down here, in a shocking turn of events, we get a small tease towards another character. I'll talk a little bit more about him later. We hear a line from Martin Lee that I really like a lot.
Take care of this place. It represents the best part of me.
Not much else to say about it other than I think it's a cool line, so props to whoever wrote it. But I do want to say that I think it's interesting that we get to see Martin and Peter having a normal conversation together. I really want to see what kind of awkward conversations Peter has with him after Spider-Man finds out his secret. Will Peter still play it off as if he still thinks he's a nice guy? I can't wait to see some of these interactions. Next we get to see Miles Morales, who is wearing a Midtown High shirt. We got a very brief tease of him at the end of the E3 2017 gameplay demo, but now we get to see him again. Surprisingly, he already knows Peter, so I'm really interested in how they actually know each other and what kind of relationship they have. I don't think Miles knows Peter Spider-Man, at least not early on. This is just based off of how excited he looks here to be seeing Spider-Man. Anyway, let's get into a little bit of speculation and theories about Miles, and how he plays into my idea of Spider-Man No More. So let's say at some point in the game, Miles is bit by a spider and gets powers and he's hesitant and scared of using them. In the comics, Miles becomes Spider-Man after the death of Peter Parker, because he feels that had he had the courage to use his powers when he got them, then he could have helped Peter and prevented Peter from dying. Now, what if in Insomniac Spider-Man universe, Peter's death isn't what drives Miles to become Spider-Man? What if Peter does throw in the towel and does give up being Spider-Man so he can have a normal life? Then crime goes up and nobody's there to stop it. Miles, having these feelings of knowing that he can help, decides to take it upon himself to become Spider-Man, and we get this segment of the game where we actually play as Miles. Eventually, Miles discovers that Peter was Spider-Man, and goes and tells him to get his shit together, and Peter finds it in him to be Spider-Man again. Then we go through that web shooter bracelet thing I talked about earlier, and now we're left with 2 Spider-Man with different levels of skill and experience towards the end of the game, that we can switch between and we can free roam with. And it also sets up the sequel where Peter's training Miles. So yeah, that's my little idea of Miles' role in the game, so let me know what you think of it. Alright, so next we have more characters. We get to see what Norman Osborn looks like for the first time in these banners. Next we get this really quick look at Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin. This is clearly moments after he's taken down by Spider-Man, judging by how torn up he looks. He's also wearing the same suit that he is in the concept art we got from D23. As he's taken away, he says,
"I'm the one who kept order in this city!"
Which leads me to the next scene, which has a lot of information, so brace yourselves, we're gonna be here for a while. Here we have what seems to be the map of the game, which, if it is the map of the game, then holy shit, this map is huge! Now, Insomniac's community director James Stevenson did say that the map would be around 4 to 6 times larger than Sunset Overdrive, so maybe this picture gives us a good idea of what that actually looks like. In the top right corner here, we get some interesting shipping information. We see the words Dover District here, which could imply that the city is going to be divided up into districts, and maybe each one of these districts is run by a different gang or supervillain from Spidey's past. This actually makes sense when you think about what Fisk said about keeping order in the city. Basically, I'm assuming Kingpin was pretty much in charge of the city, or at least a large part of it, and every other gang or criminal was too scared to try to dethrone him. Fisk was probably keeping order to the city by offering people mob-style protection for money, and keeping other criminals in line. Once Spider-Man took him down, I think Mr. Negative saw the perfect opportunity to try to take control for himself. Next, let's talk a little bit about Devil's Breath. So Devil's Breath is a fast-spreading poisonous gas used by Mr. Negative. It's extremely deadly, and the thing that makes it interesting is that it only affects people with traces of the DNA that was put into it when it was made. Mr. Negative actually uses this poison to kill a lot of the members of the Carnelli and Manfredi mob families in order to try to take down the Maggia crime organization, which all of this makes a lot of sense for this game. Kingpin is out of the picture, so Mr. Negative comes in to take control and uses his Devil's Breath to kill any remaining criminal organizations. In the comics, Mr. Negative even manages to get some of Spider-Man's DNA for Devil's Breath. Then Spider-Man and Black Cat go to Mr. Negative's lair to try to steal it back, so maybe we get a mission similar to this in the game. The last thing I want to point out about this image is the origin point being Symkaria. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with this place, Symkaria is a country in Marvel Comics that has pretty close ties and borders Latveria, the country ruled by Dr. Doom. Now how is this relevant in any way other than being an Easter egg? Well, Symkaria is actually the birthplace and ruled by Silver Sable. So this leaves us with a lot of questions. First one being, is Silver Sable in the game? Now, Silver Sable is a mercenary, meaning she'll go after anybody for money. She's not necessarily a villain, hell, she's even helped Spidey out a few times. However, she has gone after Spidey too. In other media and continuity, she's also been portrayed as only being a villain, so based off of this, it's kind of hard to tell where her morals lie in the Insomniac verse. So let's unpack this one step at a time. Mr. Negative is seemingly importing his Devil's Breath, or at least ingredients for Devil's Breath, from Symkaria. But who is he getting it from? So either he paid Silver Sable to supply him with it, or he's getting it from another person, and eventually we get a scene or a mission where Silver Sable helps Spidey stop Mr. Negative from importing poison from her country. Or, there's always the possibility that this is just an Easter egg and I'm looking into it too much. As an added little side tangent, I think it's worth pointing out that in the Spectacular Spider-Man animated series, Silver Sable is actually the daughter of Silvermane, who is head of the Manfredi family of the Maggia crime syndicate that Mr. Negative tries to kill. Doubt any of this will actually be in the game, but I thought it was a fun little connection I found between all these characters. Here we get our first good look at Mary Jane, and again, I'll talk about her later, I promise. Next, we get another shot of the city with some new billboards that I spent way too much time trying to fucking read. This sign says Sladdington or Slashington? I don't know, some shit along those lines. And this one has a picture of some muscly dude. This logo probably means something, but I got tired of squinting at a really pixelated image, so fuck it. Over here we have a building that caught my attention because of the circle-y thing on top of it. It kinda reminds me of the Sanctum Sanctorum from Doctor Strange. It's hard to see, but seemingly it has similar lines. Maybe this is the Sanctum Sanctorum and Doctor Strange is a part of the world, which would be cool because I'd love to see cameos and Easter eggs to other superheroes. Or, you know, maybe it's just based off an actual building that's in New York that I don't know about and I'm just an idiot. A quick shot of Peter's spider sense tingling, which is the same effect that we saw during the gameplay. Now we're seemingly back at the scene from earlier where Fisk gets taken away. Then Mr. Negative and the inner demon start blowing stuff up, which we've seen from the D23 concept art. So maybe the scene is actually an assassination attempt from the demons to try to kill Fisk with the dragon's breath. Now we get a look at Yuri's character model for the first time. Last time we only got a small portrait, so this is pretty cool. So here's some clever editing. After Yuri says she needs backup, we cut to these dudes. So in our minds, they would probably be the backup Yuri called for. But these guys are actually wearing purple, so that makes me assume they're Kingpin's men, since Kingpin is also wearing purple. Unless if, you know, the cops in New York are just super fashionable and wear purple, you know, that's cool too. We get some really quick shots of some set pieces that I'm sure will be accompanied by QTEs. Okay, now we're getting into some quick shots of gameplay. Really quick, I just want to point out the level of detail in this room. This seems to take place in Grand Central Station, and it's really impressive how accurate all the architecture looks here. So I just want to give Insomniac a pat on the back for making this look as accurate as possible. I can't wait to see other real life locations that they put this much detail into. Osborn influence seems to be everywhere in the city. Not only is Norman mayor, but Oscorp seems to play a really big part with the city's technology. Okay, so back to the gameplay, and more importantly the part that I feel surprised everyone the most about this trailer. So when I, as well as many other people, saw this trailer, when we saw this clip, everyone instantly jumped to the conclusion that you could play as Mary Jane. And as I was writing the script for this breakdown, before I even had the chance to speculate anything about it, Insomniac put up a post on the PlayStation blog confirming that Mary Jane is playable. MJ is a smart, savvy reporter with the Daily Bugle, and she's investigating the suspicious activity happening throughout the city. She won't be just a bystander either, so yes, players will even play as MJ for key moments. So I think this is a really interesting take for MJ. I was actually noticing that in some of the shots she was holding a camera, so that got me thinking, does she work for the Bugle? So it's nice to get the confirmation that she does. Now, just like the Peter Parker segments we saw earlier, all we really get is the over-the-shoulder shot implying we can play as her, but we don't actually see what we're doing as her. The fact that she's hiding from the demons behind this box, and Insomniac says that she's investigating, immediately takes my mind to stealth. Like you stealth around the mission with Spider-Man and take pictures for the Bugle. Since Spidey says,
We've got to play this just right.
it implies that they are very much going to be working together as a team for some missions. Maybe MJ distracts enemies, maybe they split up into different rooms. I honestly don't know. The possibilities with MJ being playable are endless, and this new dynamic has me really excited to see how big of a role she plays into gameplay. I also have a few questions about this, like how do you switch between Spider-Man and MJ? Can you switch manually and the character you don't play as just gets controlled by some AI? Or does the game make you switch at specific moments? Also, the fact that there's another playable character in the game at all also opens up the possibility of having other characters be playable as well. I already said my theory for Miles, maybe Silver Sable is playable in a level, or maybe the part where Peter and Black Cat break into Mr. Negative's lair is in the game, and you get to switch to Black Cat there. Regardless if any of this other stuff actually happens, the fact that you get to play as MJ has me really excited. Here we see a little Easter egg to Marvel Games executive director Bill Roseman, so you know, shoutouts to him, he seems like a pretty nice dude. We get some more flashy set pieces that I'm sure have QTEs. Here we have this guy, I don't know if he's important to the story, or if he's just a random NPC. But regardless, we see that his skin has this gray negative effect on it. So Mr. Negative actually has a power where his touch can corrupt people and invert their morals. This is something that he has actually done to Aunt May after she walked in on Martin Lee punishing one of the inner demons. So maybe we get something like that in the game. Peter has also fallen victim to his corruption, so maybe there's a mission where you actually work for Mr. Negative until you break free. Next we get the shot of Peter suiting up in his apartment. The first and most obvious Easter egg in this room is the Crusher Hogan vs. the Spider poster in the corner. Of course, Crusher Hogan being the wrestler Peter fights for money when he first gets his powers. Something I think is really interesting about it is the fact that they are actually using the designs from the Ultimate Comics. Peter's costume is identical to it, and Crusher has the initials on his forehead. I think that's a nice little detail that kind of plays into the idea that this game is in some alternate version of the Ultimate Universe, especially since Miles is here too. Another interesting thing about it is the date. Now I want to say this was a reference to the release of Amazing Fantasy 15, but at the same time, the Marvel website says it was released on the 10th. I'm not entirely sure the exact release date of it myself, but if this is an Easter egg to the release date of the comic, then either someone needs to fix this poster or someone needs to update the Marvel website. Here we have a calendar with some fun dates on it. We can see here Pete's rent is due on the 15th. Maybe that's also a nod to Amazing Fantasy 15. Here it says something about Aunt May. I don't know. I think it says like her birthday or party or something. I honestly can't tell. And for Halloween, it actually says what to wear, which I thought was pretty funny. Underneath that, we get some pictures of Aunt May and Uncle Ben. So even though this isn't an origin story, it's cool that we get to see what Uncle Ben looks like in this universe. I'm going to go ahead and assume this is Harry Osborn. Considering how important the Osborns seem to be to the city, I feel like it's a pretty safe bet that Harry will be in the game. Below that, we have a camera. Obviously, Peter has some history with the Daily Bugle, and even though he's working as a scientist now, that doesn't necessarily mean that he doesn't do some freelance work for them, especially since MJ is working there too. More montages of badassery. Now we get a shocking appearance from Shocker. Just reused the same joke twice. Not much to say about him. He's obviously robbing a bank. Who knows how big a role he plays in the actual story, or maybe he's just a side mission or something. His design is pretty cool. I kind of feel like he can be an alternate costume for Scorpion in Mortal Kombat. So yeah, we're seeing more villains, which is a good thing. Now we have this room, which I think is Fisk's penthouse or mansion or something. I say this because the art on the walls looks like it could fit the paintings that we see in the concept art. There's also a helicopter outside the window, so I'm assuming this is what the level where you take down Fisk looks like. Now we get a quick shot of this train sequence, and if you know Spider-Man, then you know that train scenes are usually pretty amazing. So something I like about this trailer is how much it shows of the concept art we got from D23. I think it was a pretty cool idea for Insomniac to show us the concept art before the trailer, and then showing us how they brought it to life in the game. I think it's a pretty cool sneak peek behind the curtain of how games go from just being ideas to fleshed out playable worlds. We see the game's logo, then Spidey basically steals the words out of everyone's collective mouths.
Whew! Anyone else need a breather?
Insomniac have said that they like adding almost like a message from the developer in every trailer, and I really like that. The first one was
No pressure, right?
kind of say like, oh, we're making a Spider-Man game and a lot of people have very high hopes for it, but no pressure. The second one is
Please don't screw this up.
to kind of show that they know how important this is to a lot of fans, and saying that we hope we don't screw it up. And now we get anyone else need a breather? I really like that because the first two feel like they're unsure of themselves and hoping they get it right. But this one, it's like they've seen the support the fans have given them, and they have a little bit of cockiness in a good way, like, yeah, you know, we're making a Spider-Man game and it looks badass, no big deal. I fucking love it. Hopefully we get more of these little one-liners directed to the audience. We end with a release year of 2018 with no solid date. The president of Sony Interactive Entertainment, Sean Layden, said at E3, the stuff coming in 2018. All of that is coming in the first half of the year. So, is it in the next 12 to 13 months? Most likely. So hopefully we get it in the first half of the year. But if Insomniac decide they need more time and push it to the second half to really make this game as amazing as it possibly can be, I say go for it. I have full confidence that they know what they're doing, and they will deliver a great game. So this ends another one of my trailer breakdowns. Overall, I like this trailer a lot. It's exactly the kind of trailer I wanted ever since this game was announced. But I've talked enough about it already, and I'd really like to know what all of you thought about it. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did you find any Easter eggs I missed? Or do you have a 4K display that allows you to read whatever the fuck these billboards say? Make sure to put all of that down in the comments because I genuinely enjoy reading and responding to what you have to say. Keep in mind, I made this video before the Insomniac Q&A livestream talking about the trailer, so if they revealed anything new there, I obviously didn't know about it at the time of making this. If they do end up saying anything crazy during the stream, I'll make sure to make another video giving you my thoughts on what they talked about. But anyways, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and share it with your friends. And if you haven't already, why not hit the subscribe button? I really appreciate the support and feedback. And with all of that said, that's it from me for now, and I'll talk to you all next time.